Well, greetings, people. It's a rainy Friday afternoon, and I have a little bit of time, so I am going to try to respond to a couple of comments, and I'm going to do these one at a time. But the first comment that I'm going to pick up on is my most recent video. A person named Anima14 wrote, "You can't presume anything of an atheist further than they don't believe in deities." Okay, I guess I understand what this person is saying, and I don't want to dispute it so much as really want to qualify it and show how problematic that is if you just try to give it on its own terms. That is, even if it's true that you say, well, an atheist just means atheism, that is, they don't believe in any theistic God, they don't have any conception, or they don't believe in any gods that are espoused. Maybe they'll say they don't have any evidence for the existence of any gods. But it would seem that no theist is out there saying, I believe in God, without having some notion of what that God is. So they have to have some notion of it. And even there, a theist, this is my understanding of it, a theist isn't just saying, I believe in God. It's so much more than that. That there are basic life questions about who are we, where did we come from, what is the meaning of all this, does it have a purpose, is the purpose to invent purposes? I mean, there's just so many questions. Do I go anywhere after I die? Is there a right way to live? Is there not? Do I have moral obligations? What are they? What are the boundaries of 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 concern that should be there? Are they over self, over other, over my neighbor, over the stranger? Where are we to find moral order? There seems like there are a lot of basic existential questions that come with, I don't know, with being a culture member, be falling into a particular culture. And religion offers some kind of answer to those and then appeals to a God as sanctioning their response to it. So it's not as if people just say, yes, I believe in God. It's no, they say, I believe in God, and their belief in their God somehow fits into a whole life narrative, a whole life script about all those questions. And so when a person claims that, well, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in any deities, well, you have to have some sort of counter narrative then, or some sort of counter a story or an account of all of those questions. And I think, what most people do today is they make an appeal to science, and they say, yes, well, science would suggest that the cosmos is this many billion years old, life emerged this way, we have various forms of connection through the genome that we have now tracked. And in a lot of ways, I mean, I think that's very comforting for people. That is a kind of sufficient narrative that in some way it starts to say, well, is this a kind of religion? Now, I don't want to say that atheism is a religion, but maybe part of the question then is, rather than asking what is atheism and how do you define atheism, is it just lack of belief, is it belief, can babies be atheists, all this, you say, what is religion? What do we mean by religion? How is religion related to theism? How is religion related to spirituality? And I guess what I would want to say is that, for me anyway, religion is largely psychology. It has to do with cultural psychology that embeds in mythic narrative symbols kind of wisdom for people about how to handle their lives, how to accept death, how to come to terms with, um, I guess, their own frailties and vulnerabilities. Uh, Again, religions, they provide answers to ultimate questions about existence, but they provide psychological advice, wisdom, spiritual practices to help a person get through life's difficulties and challenges. And a lot of that comes by belief systems. And so these belief systems that are there, if some person says, well, I believe in God, and again, we have to say, well, what do you mean by God? And then again, is it a polytheism? Is it a monotheism? Is it a deism? I mean, there's so many different notions of of God. And again, a person says, well, I just have no notion of anything supernatural, no divinity, no anything like that. Okay, again, so you're going to have to make appeal to some sort of facts of the matter about human origins, about the possibilities of human self-understanding, of human growth in kinds of feeling. See, I think it's partly about that there are ways of feeling the world, of our connectedness to it, ways of feeling our connections to the stranger, um, that I think religious beliefs, they're they try to cultivate some of those capacities. Now, in this video on atheism, or it was called Atheist by uh, Andromeda's Wake. Yeah, I think there was something very wonderful in appealing to science in giving response to those questions. So there does seem to be something about a scientific worldview that can provide not simply a claim that there are no deities, right? Or there's no evidence for anything like the supernatural, but it also has to, as I think this video is somewhat doing, is it's giving an address to those questions. So there does seem to be long point of this story here is this is for Anima 14. No, I don't think you get to just say that you don't believe in deities. I think if you say that, you're then encumbered with some responsibility to give an account of all of those existential questions that religions with their deities are trying to answer. Now, if you're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to do that through science, well, fair enough. But now you're doing more than denying deities. What you're saying is that there's a counter alternative to the religious explanation of the origin of life, the nature of humanity, and the purpose of existence and all this kind of other stuff. It's more than just a fiat denial of deities. Okay, as far as the second comment, this comes from Zarkov, who, again, he's no stranger to giving somewhat snarky comments on my vids here. He puts my view, and this is on a video that I had shot up the day before on nihilism, psychological practices, and spiritual exercises. And Zarkov, let's see, what did he write? He says, my view is that if you have to use religious words like spirituality to point to what you mean, then you don't yet know what you're talking about. See, this to me really starts to raise the question in an interesting way. Is the proper science a reductivism or a holism? Let's hopefully say both. But what I hear in there is a kind of very suspicious reductivism. I mean, I'd want to say to Zarkov, I mean, why not just say that there really is, I mean, religious words like spirit, a religious word like spirituality, that's nothing. Why even use the word like consciousness? I mean, why not just say there's really only brain states? There's only neurophysiology that's going on. Are you going to deny all abstractions? Will we say that there's no such thing as love? I think the more that someone wants to deny, I guess, the way that we're connected to larger wholes. See, I think that's part of the problem of some of the discussion about what is the truly religious view. See, I think religion takes many forms, but I think the pervasive spiritual growth that you could see in, I guess, Western culture, maybe the globe, is a I guess an appreciation and a respect for the other, a tolerance and a recognition of the other as other. And there it starts to, we get into these larger questions of who am I and how do I relate to these larger aspects of the world. And I don't think that we can reduce ourselves down to, the neurophysiology in my brain. I mean, at a certain point, am I even here? Is there an I here? Now, what would the scientific view really say? I think the scientific view is going to be robustly complex here, and it's going to give very different views from different traditions. That is, an economist is going to look at me and my relation to the environment very differently than an ecologist, than a physicist, than a chemist, than an evolutionary biologist. Each one of them is going to bring such a different perspective on the degree to which I am a discrete, separate entity, self-sufficing onto myself, reducible to my neurophysiology. Is that who I am? I mean, is there really an I there at all? I mean, if the scientific view, if we go back to that, well, what do we mean by science? If science is we're not going to believe in anything for which we don't have evidence, it's going to get really, really complicated there. That is, science seems to believe in countless things for which we don't have evidence. And or at least for which we can't scientifically, you know, verify some of that. And there are all these socially validated and what they're constructs of the human imagination that then get lived down in culture. Constructs like wealthy or miserable or happy. I mean, we could try to say there is no such thing as happiness. We don't know how to measure it. It's this complex, nebulous, what exactly is happiness? What is meaningfulness? Now, if a person's going to say, well, there's really no such thing as meaningfulness, there is no such thing as happiness, there's no such thing as love, there's really no such thing as consciousness, there's no such thing as the experience of freedom. That's one thing to say there is no such thing as freedom. It's another thing to say there's no such thing as the experience of freedom. Is there no such thing as the experience of happiness? Now, maybe there's no such thing as experience. Experience is just another word. The problems with reductionism, I hope that people can see that. The problems with reductionism is that it, it isn't really going to be a sufficiently scientific orientation. The scientific orientation is going to say, no, a body is always within, it would seem to say, that a body is always within a set of systems whereby in some ways I can register myself as an autonomous, separate agent. My body has enough internal integrity for me to register it as a self-sufficing thing there in space. But in countless other ways, it's not. I mean, not only do I need a certain amount of environment to move in, and I need a certain amount of oxygen and atmospheric pressure, and I need all kinds of certain chemicals, I need bacteria that aren't me but make me possible. The body is so complex in its relationship to the environment, and I think the more that we start to look at what science reveals to us, science achieves in a lot of ways what I was trying to talk about with the kind of spirituality or the kind of religiosity that's worth wanting, which is one that helps people learn how to shed ego, helps them to learn how to problematize who they think they are, to what extent is dreamless sleep and who you are as a dreamless sleeper, is that a significant spiritual part of your identity? I think from a scientific view, it's very interesting. What does sleep say about the supposed autonomy and independence of the organism? I mean, it's one thing to talk about how we need food, and we do need food, but sleep is not only do we need sleep, but sleep is like literally part of our being. It's not something that's outside us that we're dependent upon. Sleep is literally our own dependence upon a restful state, right? I mean, we were sleeping well before we were eating. Well, again, some of it gets, sort of silly to make those distinctions, but I think the point, hopefully it makes sense to people, right? That there are interconnectedness that are being revealed by science, which they're offering not maybe a competitive, but a sort of competitive account for who we are, how we relate to the larger world, what the nature of death is, what the purpose of life is, right? But I don't think it can be reduced to a single science. I think if we try to reduce it down to Darwinian biological science, we're going to miss all these other, again, the problems of mathematics, problems of art, right? At any rate, so those are some thoughts. What else would I say on that? I mean, I guess part of the question, and I'll just leave it with a question. Is nature? This is for Zarkov. Is nature parts without a whole? Is that what it is? Is there no whole to nature, and it's just a bunch of parts? Thanks.